right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken, and thank you for watching the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Andrew Fillipponi in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam. And when you're taking your phone calls tonight, 412-575-2600. We definitely have a lot to talk about, Pony. And we're going to start with DK Metcalf. Was in that altercation yesterday. I was in Detroit for it. He was ushered out of the locker room before as we were walking in. He didn't talk today, but you hear rumors out of his camp that the fan used a racial slur. The fan already hired a law firm. He's going to lose upwards of, $550,000 for a 2-game suspension. But I just saw, and I was reading, Jonathan Jones of CBS says there's a clause in the contract that would void maybe $40 million, and the Steelers could take advantage of it. I don't think that they do, but that's crazy to think that this altercation could cost him more than $40 million potentially.
Well, because it's conduct detrimental to the NFL. And there's a clause in contracts that does say things like that, where if you do something off the field or even on the field that is not like a legal hit or something like that, there's a way for NFL teams to take the guaranteed money away. So that doesn't mean that the contract annual salaries change. It just means, I think now the Steelers can basically get out of the contract at any point, other than the signing bonus money that's been spread out over the duration of it. So it's a huge deal for Metcalf. It means that a lack of productivity or injuries could ultimately cost him millions of dollars now because of this mental lapse, this brain fart on his part. Look, I want to believe him. I want to believe that a guy that's really been an upstanding citizen in the NFL wouldn't make up that a fan used this kind of terrible language towards him, but I also think it's peculiar that we haven't seen any or heard any kind of audio that backs up Metcalf's claim. You'd think either from a camera phone from a fan or maybe a mic'd up player or somebody down near the field with all the cameras and stuff, we'd hear something, but we haven't. And the fan has come out and offered up a big time denial. He's lawyered up, and all we've heard from DK Metcalf is the stuff he's leaked to James Harrison and Chad Johnson. Richie, I would have liked for him to do what Jalen Ramsey did after Jamar Chase spit on him. And that's say, look, I know what you guys thought I did was crazy, but here's why I did it. And he didn't do that after the game, which I was disappointed in. If you got baited into it because somebody said words that they should never use and should be thrown out of NFL stadiums for, then tell us about it. Don't tell your friends. Say it yourself.
Yeah, Pony, I was one of the first guys walking in that locker room yesterday. I was half thinking, I was going to make a beeline to wherever his locker was, but I was half thinking that he might do what Ramsey did. But then I see him walking out with an escort, essentially, while we were walking in. So we knew that wasn't going to happen. But it's crazy. What would you do if you were the Steelers? Would you take advantage of that contract language?
It all depends on how he performs. If he gets hurt and then he's not the same player a couple of years from now, yeah, I would. Right now I don't think it's an issue because I do think he's still been a pretty productive player. Now, I thought this incident, and Tony Romo and Jim Nantz brought it up on the broadcast, I thought it completely took him out of his game.
No
the
question.
Steelers were lucky that they won in that respect, because if they didn't win, this would be one of the things we'd be harping on today, is another one of these Steelers wide receivers who goes ballistic and loses his composure and cool. He had an offensive pass interference right afterwards. He dropped the ball right over the middle. He had a very quiet game. He had that nice back shoulder play later on, that great throw by Rodgers, but that was really it from this game. So the Steelers are also fortunate, and so is Metcalf, that it looks like they've got this division locked up, because if they didn't, him missing 2 games for an incident that was clearly preventable would be a huge story right now, and he'd be feeling the heat from fans and media for not making himself available for the last 2 games.
I was actually thinking the same thing when I was in the press box. I was thinking, why don't they just bench him, or why don't they just put him on the sidelines, let him cool down, play with the other guys? They were moving the ball. because he was out of his game. But maybe you put him out there as a decoy too. So that leads me to our Penn West University question of the night. You can just scan that QR code on the right-hand corner of your screen. Will DK Metcalf's suspension get reduced? Lamar Jackson, I guess, did something similar, right? He didn't get a suspension. Do you think this could be reduced to 1 game?
Only if he's got evidence that this fan instigated him in a way that's completely inappropriate and uncalled for. I remember when the Lamar Jackson thing happened in that Bills game. That fan shoved him in the face first, touched his helmet and pushed him. And that's when Lamar pushed back. And so that was his excuse. That was his reasoning. The fan from that incident was ejected from the game and isn't allowed to go back to any games. He's been banned for life. This fan was allowed to stay at the game and was not escorted out by security and did interviews with Detroit newspapers about his behavior. So I don't know. Maybe it gets reduced down to 2, but I would wonder what his logic or reasoning would be to have a more lenient punishment. What could have prompted, if his claim is true, well, then I don't think he should be suspended at all. I think he should only be fined. That would be my take. If he can prove that this fan said those things, I would take away the 2 games altogether, Richie, and let him play Sunday against the Browns.
All right, we'll dive more into this, but we got to take a break. Back with your phone calls and some of your tweets coming up next. Stay right there. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our Xfinity Tweet of the Night. This is from Tom Pelissero. Steelers wide receiver DK Metcalf had a history with this Lions fan. He confronted Sunday. Metcalf reported the same fan to Seahawks security last season while playing for Seattle, sources say. Pony, this gets even crazier. Combine that with, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you look at Dennis Santana. Wasn't he? He took a swing at a fan in Detroit, too, in a Pirates game. And that guy was wearing a Roberto Clemente jersey. So what's going on out there?
Well, there was also that incredible fight from around Thanksgiving 20 years ago when the Pistons, Pacers, and then Pistons fans got into a gigantic brawl with each other. So maybe there is just something about the city of Detroit and these weird fan interactions happening. I'll tell you what I thought was weird on this. A couple of things. Number one, how is it that among the other people on the Steelers sideline, there's a break in play, it's between quarters. We've seen some angles on the video. How is it that nobody else got involved to intervene here and keep it from happening? No players, no coaches, no Steelers security, no Steelers staff, no Ford Field security. There's police officers on the field there too. Nobody prevents it from happening. And then it happens, and Metcalf just walks back over, and nothing's done about it. The fan doesn't get interviewed by authorities. Metcalf doesn't get questioned. It's like life just went on. And then I also thought it was kind of funny, other than what, Tomlin gave no comment basic answer after the game. Richie, if there were racial slurs hurled in the direction of DK Metcalf, I was hoping that some of his teammates would defend him after the game and come out and say, look, we're happy we won, but what happened with DK Metcalf was completely unacceptable. Instead, I think Tomlin and Rodgers both praised the fans there in Detroit, didn't they? Didn't they say something about how great the atmosphere was? Atmosphere, your star players picking fights with their fans. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know about
fans?
that, but don't you think if you were a fan and you heard something to corroborate either side, you would speak out about it?
Yes, that too. I mean, I don't understand any of that. Look, regardless of who I rooted for, Steelers or Lions, if I was sitting next to a guy, especially with my family, and there's some fan that's yelling racial slurs and using, horrible language about a guy's mom, I don't want him around me at a game.
No.
I don't want him there. So I would have done, that's to me a no-brainer. I get it that things get kind of rowdy and out of control sometimes at NFL games, but there's no place for that. And if there's proof that he did that, then I would think the NFL would want to come down on this fan and take away his season tickets and prevent him from going to games in the future. Well,
let's hit the phone lines. We got John out in Huntington. That's our number one Cochrane call of the night. John, what's up?
Hi, Richie and Tony. Hey, I've seen some pictures of the Metcalf incident, and there's a lady and her son sitting right beside him, and it looks like if they would just interview them, they certainly had to overhear the conversation. What do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely think the NFL is going to do some investigation, right? I mean, they know who sits in all those seats, and they will contact those people. I know
but
some
Richie,
of those
they had
NFL
all day
security.
to do that.
And I'm sure they
this
do.
Discipline
but it's going to go. It's going to be behind closed doors, though.
Oh, well, right, but this discipline didn't come down until 5 o'clock. What were they doing from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. today? You'd think going over all the available evidence, you know, looking at their own NFL films, audio and video, seeing if any players are mic'd up, that kind of thing. And then I would think trying to talk to security and fans who were around there and could shed some light on the incident. And maybe they did do that. We just aren't privy to all the details from it. But it is interesting, too, that Goodell is technically the guy that appeals the suspension, or who Metcalf has to appeal it to. So Goodell puts forth the discipline, and that's the guy that ultimately is going to have the say when Metcalf and his people try to argue on their behalf here at a later date. This is not a neutral party like it is when players get suspended for illegal hits or something like that.
I mean, I'm sure we'll find out something more in the upcoming days. Let's go out to Walt in Youngwood. How you doing, Walt?
Hey, Richie. Happy holidays.
You too.
What happened to George Pickens? I thought he was the troublemaker. These guys are making millions of dollars. Why ain't they focusing on the game and worrying about what people are saying?
I mean, I know a lot of people in that locker room, they weren't big fans of George Pickens and his work ethic. You know, he was late, more than once. You know, this is definitely a black eye here. We got to see what the facts are with DK Metcalf. He wasn't a problem before that, and he was an exemplary teammate before this incident. So more information has to come out, right?
Rich,
there's no way
sure
he should put his hands on a fan. He should have alerted security. Right. The Steelers' security was right there. There's security on every aisle. They should have said, this guy is doing something. Get him out of here.
You know, it's interesting here. We've gotten a lot of different sides of this. You know, there's been some reporting here in the last few hours that the fan said, you know, all I did was call him by his full name, and he got mad about that. But now there are reporters that are coming out and saying, well, DK Metcalf has talked about his full name, and it's not something he's offended or bothered by. So that really doesn't jive. That doesn't make a lot of sense, that this would instigate him and prompt him just calling him by his full name to want to grab a guy and then shove a guy or kind of half punch him, however you want to describe it. But there have been more videos that have come out from fans that were around the situation. And you can't hear the fan yelling, you know, these racial slurs. If he did that, then he probably did it when they were close together, when Metcalf went to pull his hair. And to me, like, I still want to know what made Metcalf go over there in the first place. Because the video that's come out does not make it seem like he said something, you know, he said a word or said something that should get a guy thrown out of every game. From the available video that's been put out on Twitter and X and social media outlets so far.
I mean, it seems like Metcalf was contemplating walking over. He walked over a little bit, then he stopped, and he was thinking about it, and then he walked over. So I would like to get Metcalf's side of the story at some point, and maybe I don't think we'll get it in the next 2 weeks. I don't know when it'll happen. But let's go out to Bud in Brentwood. How you doing, Bud?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about is why he was over there, and also why somebody in a stadium can talk to a football player like they did.
Well, thanks for your call, Bud. I mean, obviously there's history here, too, because Pelissero said it. There's been a couple other people that said it. So how far does this history go back between the two, and what happened before? So obviously this DK did not like this guy.
Right. Well, if all the guy does is troll him and call him by his full name, it's obnoxious, but to me, that's not grounds to throw somebody out of a game. And it's definitely not grounds for somebody to go over and put their hands on a person. if the fan story is true. And again, I will stress, my natural inclination is to side with the player here more than it is the fan, because we have a documented track record with DK Metcalf. He's played in hundreds of NFL games, and this has never happened before. Yeah. The fan, we don't know from Adam. You know, this is a one-time thing, and he seemed very proud of himself after the incident occurred. So Tomlin's going to talk tomorrow at noon. And Tomlin has tried to plead the fifth here on the TJ Watt saga. He's buried his head in the sand on that. I wonder if he does the same thing with this, Richie, and says, I have no comment on it. It'll be very interesting. Maybe because this is now an issue beyond the NFL, beyond the Steelers. This is now headed to lawyers. So he might not say anything. And plus, DK won't be around now since he's suspended. So you can't even get his side. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. All right, we got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back, Pony. Where do the Steelers go from here? You know, although those last two games might be meaningless, because I think the Packers are going to beat the Ravens, especially if Love comes back. Well, where they go from here, I think, is get themselves ready for the playoffs. And by that, I mean, if Sunday's game doesn't matter, well, I know you can't rest everybody, but their most important players I wouldn't play. You can't expose Aaron Rodgers when we saw what happened with that Joey Bosa hit a couple of weeks ago with the Bills. I don't want Myles Garrett trying to set a sack record against him, burying him to the turf, and now he's in an injured situation for the playoffs. So guys like Cam Hayward, Aaron Rodgers, I would rest them until we get to that playoff game, wild card weekend, Richie. So you'd rest them if the Packers do win. You'd rest everyone on Sunday. No, would you play them at all the next week? I mean, you can't do everyone, because rosters, you know, you can't play with 20 guys. No, but like Rodgers, Cam, you would have probably rested DK too, right? Yes. Anyways. My 5 or 10 most important guys are not going to play the next two games if I'm Mike Tomlin, because it's not worth the risk. All right, Pony. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you guys on KDKA News. Thanks for watching.